Welcome to The Art of Adventure. This is episode 148 with Travis Sheridan. The Art of Adventure is the podcast that helps you travel the world, run your business, and embark on an epic quest. I'm your host, lead explorer and guide, Derek Loudermilk. You can head over to our website, derekloudermilk.com, to check out the show notes for this episode. You can also sign up for the Adventurers Reading email, where you get monthly reading recommendations, and you'll get all the latest podcast episodes and updates. So be sure you go over there to sign up. Today on the show is my friend Travis Sheridan, who was just named Global Director of Venture Cafe. And we recorded this episode. I went down to his office in St. Louis, where I'm based for the next 6 months or so. And we got a conference room and recorded this conversation. And he actually didn't know that we were just jumping right in. I hit record and we were off to the races. He's a great storyteller. And a lot of what we're talking about is centering around this environment he's created here in St. Louis, where hundreds of people come each week to Venture Cafe. It happens every Thursday. And now it's happening around the world. They're expanding to lots of other cities. But people take workshops, they network, they have a beer, eat some food, and help each other out. And it's really contributed to the startup scene here in St. Louis, which has taken off in the few years since I've been here. So we talk about his philosophy for creating an environment for success. He's facilitated hundreds of opportunities for other people, thousands probably even. And when I first came to St. Louis a couple of months ago, he was a really great guy to meet right away. He introduced me to lots of people, recommended where I should go, who I should talk to. And I think you're really going to love him. He's an awesome storyteller, and he loves to make other people successful. And so you will be able to learn a lot about being a great networker, being a good connector, and empowering other people to success. So I hope you enjoy this interview with Travis Sheridan.
For business, if your policy or marketing or customer experience is out of alignment with whatever your true north is, that's where business starts to get lost. And so the important thing is identifying true north and then aligning the compass. And then you don't worry about getting lost. You just get to do these cool things and stay found.
We can just roll right into asking questions.
Yeah.
But what prevents most people from staying found?
One, they don't know what their true north is. And secondly, their mind is too focused on a fear of getting lost instead of a comfort of staying found. So in order to stay found, you have to know your tools and trust your tools. And once you know your tools and trust your tools, then your mind starts shifting from, I can stay found and I don't have to think about not getting lost. I got lost in Yosemite at age 5, not for very long, but it was still a big place, a wild place. I thought I heard my grandparents we were going on a tram, and I thought I heard them get on the tram. And so I jumped on the tram and the tram took off, and I realized they weren't anywhere to be seen. And I panicked, as a 5-year-old would in a national park like that. And then I've gotten lost at the zoo, and I've got, just as a kid, you get lost as a kid and it's scary. And then you say, I'm never going to get lost again. And that becomes your driver. Is this, out of this fear of getting lost, you start looking at ways to prevent yourself from getting lost. And then I joined the military and learned how to use a compass and a map. And I thought, this is kind of cool. Like I have these tools. I could be dropped. And I was in the Air Force. I wasn't even like the real military. I was in the Air Force. Like I can get dropped anywhere. And as long as I have those two tools, which you really need both. And in reality, you just need the compass. I could even do without a map sometimes. But just having that compass, I'm like, all right, I can be just about anywhere and look around. And my wife gives me a hard time because I can't tell left from right. Like if we're driving, I'm like, oh yeah, take a right here. And I'm like, oh wait, I'm at the other, I can't tell left from right. But I know north, south, east, and west, wherever I am. Anywhere right. And that is very comforting to me, that I can be dropped into Prague and spend a few minutes walking around and go, okay, well, here's where I'm staying. So I can go, I know my home base. I can go anywhere and then look around for landmarks. That's
fascinating. And I've heard that men are better at that sort of spatial patterning than women. When I was in the Boy Scouts, we used to do orienteering, where it was kind of like a race, and you would go and collect waypoints, and you had to sort of read the map to get there as fast as possible. maps in business and life aren't always printed up for us, so to speak. How did you discover, because the position you're in right now, organizing Venture Cafe is, something you were meant to do. It seems like. How did you find that map and make it here?
So I think there's a benefit of time. So I was able to look back at all the places where I have been, all the map of my life, and see where where this path was taking me. And as I looked back, each point might have been a different type of job, but I was always building community and design and taking really cool elements and almost a design process and designing community, designing it more than building it sometimes. Just really, how do you design and then build a community? And so Venture Cafe was just that next opportunity, a bigger opportunity to design a really robust community. And without getting a God complex, I will just say I grew up in church, and at one point I thought I wanted to be a pastor, and then for a number of reasons, I didn't anymore. But what I liked about that whole idea of building a congregation or building a community still resonated. Like I look back and go, oh, that's what I really wanted to do. I didn't want to be a preacher, and even on Thursday nights, I'm not the one preaching from to the masses. It's just, how do we bring people together and let them do the more this lay leadership, layperson communication. But the power is you still need somebody to orchestrate it and bring it all together and communicate the larger vision so that an outsider looking in to say, this seems weird. I'm like, yeah, it is weird. Let me tell you about it, because it's 100% weird. You're right. That feeling you have, I get it. It's supposed to feel that way.
And Venture Cafe, I've been to the Thursday night event here, lots and lots of people.
Yeah.
What is the idea with Venture Cafe?
So our mission is to connect innovators to make things happen. That's like a nice little tagline type mission. So there's two very key important pieces to that: connecting innovators, and then we have to do that second piece, which is making things happen, allowing them to make things happen. So Thursday night is meant to really serve as a platform or an entry point for a lot of people. We're not an incubator, we're not a investor, but we want to create this platform for people to get connected. And then there's other things we do throughout the year that allow us to leverage that platform. So we have a program for educators where we take K through 12 teachers and embed them in startups on corporate innovation teams. So that they can get during the summer. So instead of teaching summer school, they get to go drop in and do a discrete project with a startup, and then take that experience after 6 weeks back to their classroom for the next school year and augment their curriculum through a lens of innovation and entrepreneurship. And the reason we're doing that is not for today's workforce or the needs of corporate America today or the needs of the economy even today. It's more future focused. It's getting second graders and third graders and fifth graders interested and inspired and involved in innovation so that they can make career choices for jobs that don't exist today. Unfortunately, schools are teaching kids the skill set necessary for application today. Mm-hmm. And I mean, the job I'm in, there's never a guidance counselor that would say, Travis, here's what you can do with your life. Like, exactly, yeah. You don't know that, or the work that you do. Like, there's not a guidance counselor to say, you know what, Derek, here's your path, because it doesn't exist. And so I'd rather get teachers talking to kids about how to create their own paths, generally through a mindset of innovation. And for me, innovation is just a person willing to challenge the status quo and make some sort of change. So it's not a tech thing. It's just, hey, the status quo is this. I think there's a better way to do something and build upon the status quo. And so that's one of our programs. We have the other program we run is we bring investors in from outside the area, from Boston or San Francisco, to meet with local startups. That helps develop the capital resources that are necessary to grow ventures. And a lot of this, and so they come and participate either on Thursday, or we have them here for a few days, meeting one-on-one with startups and meeting with the investment community, helping mature the investment community in St. Louis. And then we have another program that we're rolling out, which is really to encourage more beta testers. And so when we look at the pie of people who participate in Venture Cafe, there is a swath of folks who I refer to as the fanboys and fangirls of innovation. Like they're not innovative in their jobs or in their careers, but what they are interested in innovation, right? They want to know what the latest app is, especially if it's done locally. Like they have an interest in like local innovation. Sure, yeah. So we're creating this platform so that if you have a new app or if you have a new podcast, you're like, I'd love to get some feedback on this podcast. So I'm going to, instead of launching it really large, I'm going to launch it to this group of beta testers first who have an interest in new things that are coming out of St. Louis. I'm going to have them listen to it, test it, and then create that feedback loop so they can now be part of shaping innovation, right? So now when the podcast comes out, they're like, listen, I got to hear it first. You know how the intro is a little different? I actually recommended that. And so they feel like they're part of the build process. And I just look around and go, that's what's missing in a lot of communities. Because I'm a former economic developer, which I guess you could become a lifelong economic developer. But, economic developers always preach this whole buy local, premise, which I do get. And I really want as many people buying local as possible. But that's a huge psychological and economic barrier sometimes to get a person to buy local. And what we need to do first is get people to try local. Just sample local things. Because if you try it, the likelihood of you buying it is much greater. And
it's like when you take the tour of the local brewery and you're like, that's my beer now.
Yeah, that's what I'm going to drink from now on.
Yeah.
How do we get more people just trying things? So those are the types of things that really excite me. It's just like it's the ability to redefine how people participate in the innovation community and giving almost everybody a role to play, even if they're not a hacker or a coder or an entrepreneur. To me, entrepreneurship is just one pathway in innovation. There's a lot of other things that you can do to be innovative that don't lead to starting your own business or venture.
When your idea of connect innovators to make things happen, is it bringing in the investors and this beta testing? Is that
that's part of
things happen?
Yeah, that's part of making things happen. The other part is bringing in on Thursdays, bringing in the subject matter experts so that people can learn and increasing their level of knowledge so they can make things happen a little bit better. We offer 8 to 12 educational sessions every week. That's about 550 throughout the year. Right now, we're pulling out all the ones we did over this last year, and I'm putting them into making it look like a college catalog because I want to just show the depth of what we are offering, and I will probably print it out so that there's mass to it, right? It really is like a community college or a college level or a college, education on how to learn. And a lot of stuff can be done digitally, and I'm still a huge proponent of, digital assets and resources. But I also am a big believer in analog and getting people face to face. And the fact that we have these sessions and they're not live streamed and you can't sit at home and participate. You have to be here to participate. And if you miss it, that's okay. We do it 49 times a year. You can't make it every week, but that's okay. If there's a session that you missed, I will put you in touch with the person that gave the presentation and you guys can meet offline or they can send you the deck or whatever. But I think I don't want to spoon feed too many folks. I want people to make the commitment to come down here and get engaged.
Yeah.
Get a beer while they're here. It's not a bad thing.
What, for a person that wants to go to a Thursday Venture Cafe or any live event where there are other entrepreneurs, what's the best way to take advantage of that time?
So I have this 3-pronged approach that I really recommend for people to enter into any sort of quote unquote networking event or just entering into a new community. And that is, I want to meet you. I want to know you. I want to help you. That's the mantra that they should have in their head as they are sitting at home ready to, jump in the car and head to an event. Think about who you want to meet. Once you meet them, think about how you want to get to know them. What is it that you want to know about that person? Not what their business needs are, but what makes them them. And then something will probably surface a way that you can help them. Now that's in that series. I want to meet you. I want to know you. And I want to help you. It's never about a sale and it's never about what they can do for you. It's always, the more I've gotten to know a person, how I can help meet their needs and how I can help them is going to surface naturally. And it might be through a business relationship, but other times it could just be through a connection. And I think that if you are a person that readily helps other people, you will become your stock, your social equity will continue to improve and your needs will get met. It's again, kind of like the youth program or the teachers program. I believe in long game with a lot of this stuff. And so when people look at networking events as transactional, I can, great, Venture Cafe, there's 500 people. I can drum up some business there. You probably won't. You're going to have a miserable time. And you'll make other people miserable in the process. But if you're enter into it, wow, I'm going there because I want to meet people, first hurdle. Now that I've met a few people, there's a subset that I really want to get to know. And as I get to know them, either through repeatedly coming back or a coffee outside of it, and just really getting to know them, then you'll find out, how you can help them.
I think that some people still wonder, maybe this other person has more success than I do or whatever. I'm young.
Yeah.
What are some ways that people can help other people that they meet?
So we try to model that through a lot of the workshops that we do by having young people lead the workshops. And so we always tell folks that you are a subject matter expert somewhere. Like you have expertise in some area. It is challenging when there's like this little tipping point when you're young. Sometimes when you're young, you're like, damn right, I'm an expert. Like I got this book learning that I just did. Right. And then people will get turned off by that. I'm like, don't let people try to get turned off by that, because when kids come out of college, young people come out of college, they have all this passion. And then all we do as adults, as older adults, is like find a systematic way to squash that. All right. So what is that energy or the passion? Yes, that might be very theoretical, but what theories are they're learning newer theories than we learned when we were in college. So what is it that they're learning? And especially, if you look at the millennial community, they really want to find a way to apply what they've learned. So how do we create this opportunity for them to apply what they've learned? And so when I talk to younger people and they're like, well, how do I overcome the fact that I'm young? I'm like, you don't do that until you're older. And being young isn't a detriment. You have to convince some people, but find the low hanging fruit. Find the people that are like me that like young people, right? Ask me to introduce you to people that I know that really like young people. Find those connections. And if you're an older person, which I do see at Venture Cafe as well, some of the older people are like, I don't have anything to really contribute. Bullshit. You have like life experience. That whole map thing that we all don't have available. You have a life of data points along this map that you can share with folks. And believe it or not, we are still a society that likes to hear stories. We like when older generations tell us stories. Now, don't wag your finger at younger people and don't let your stories become the foundation for truth, but realize that they are your life experience. And I think that's why podcasts are so important, and the work that you're doing, Derek, is so important, because you are collecting these stories, and we need these stories as not fact. Like my path is my path. It's not the right thing for everybody. If there are elements that people can learn from it, great. But, it really is it's a sample size of one.
Yeah. I've observed that you your words flow freely from you, and you always have the right thing to say. Mm-hmm. Again, other people might not have the same practice or gift.
Yeah.
So, the hardest part sometimes is like walking up to a group of people you don't know.
Yeah.
What's the best way to make sure those like early interactions go well? Yeah.
They're, again, sample size of one. I try to look at, okay, what if a person isn't the insane extrovert like I am, right? Like, I think, and that's one of the things I worry about with Venture Cafe sometimes is as it gets larger, with 500 people, is it only comfortable for extroverts, or if an introvert walks in, are they just, go run and hide? So what I try to let people know is, especially like something like Venture Cafe, if you are introverted, if you are shy, if you just don't like large crowds, the time to show up to Venture Cafe is when there is a workshop or a breakout session that is of interest to you. Like, don't walk into the cafe space where the bar is and there's a bunch of people mingling or hanging around, because their body language is not necessarily welcoming, right? If you walk into a larger space, people have already created some sort of circle where they're having a conversation, and it is awkward to try to penetrate that circle. But if you show up and you're like, I'm showing up this week to go to this workshop, and maybe it's just one workshop or one session, then you're in a room with 15 people. And at the end of that workshop, you have something in common with everybody in that room. You have just heard the same thing, right? Like, so you have some baseline, a basis for conversation. So I tell people, if you're in that workshop, write down a quote, write down a key learning that you had. And then afterward, it's not that awkward to go up to somebody and just say, hey, like I wrote down this thing that so-and-so said. What are some things that you learned about that you took out of this workshop? Or why did you even attend this workshop? And then it's a little bit more of a natural way. And then, so tell me a little bit about yourself. And is this your, looking at the numbers, is this your first time at Venture Cafe?
Yeah.
So I think you have to come with a purpose and like an entry point, so that then because then those 15 people, if they start migrating to the cafe/bar area, they might be a circle, right? Like they might have this like little group that they're going to continue the conversation. Not always, but it's a likely way to start facilitating deeper conversations. The other thing I tell people is read a lot. Like read and listen to NPR, because if you can be a marginal conversationalist, you're more fun at parties and events. Mm-hmm. But if you're not reading a lot, if you're not listening to talk radio or something like that, if you're not politically engaged, going to these workshops, again, at least give you a baseline of knowledge you can share with the other 10 to 15 people that are in that room.
Yeah, it's like I've become known as that guy at parties who's going to come up with some random fact.
Yeah.
And I'll be like, well, didn't see that coming, but it's interesting. I guess let's talk about it.
Yeah.
What are some of the outcomes that you're proud of through this Venture Cafe here? Yeah,
so we're just the last week and this week we're recording video stories of some of the impacts that have happened. So there's one of my favorite ones is a local bioscientist, COO for a biotech startup, came to Venture Cafe very early on, probably within the first 3 months of us doing this. And he ran down the hall and he stopped me and he's like, Travis, I spent 45 minutes talking to a filmmaker. It was so cool. And I'm like, that's awesome. Like, Dave, what did you and this filmmaker talk about? And he said that they talked about the art of storytelling because as a bioscientist, he's actually really crappy at telling his story. And filmmakers are really good at storytelling. Mm. And so they just spent 45 minutes talking about the nuance of storytelling. And this bioscientist felt a little bit more human, less talking at the petri dish level, learning how to talk at the human level. And the reason he was so excited is because they were in the process to compete for Y Combinator, which is a big accelerator out on the West Coast. And he gives me, I think, too much credit, gives that conversation too much credit. But he said that conversation helped them refine their pitch so they could be more effective at telling it. And then they ended up getting into Y Combinator. And I'm like, that's awesome. Thank you for giving me some credit for that. But he said, historically, he would have gone to quote unquote networking events and it would have been bioscience to bioscience. And it's just so siloed and it's still additive. It's still great, but you're not really stretching yourself. You're just talking to other people within your same sphere. And it's somewhat of an echo chamber from time to time. So that's one very tangible thing that's come out of it. There was another guy who runs a film festival, Black Film Festival. And he told me just the other day that 95% of the sponsorships for his film festival came from relationships at Venture Cafe.
Oh, wow.
And he's like, and it's not like I came here peddling sponsorship. It's just I started hanging out with people and telling them what I did and they liked it. And I learned about what they did. And lo and behold, we ended up getting sponsored. 95% of my sponsorship came from relationships at Venture Cafe. So that's a very tangible thing. I don't know if I like it and then I don't. I'm like, oh, some seem like salesy, but no, this person is able to advance this film festival due to relationships he made at Venture Cafe.
And that comes back to the making things happen.
Yeah. That now his film festival is happening, right?
Yeah, it's great. It seems like all of this, earlier we said, this is what you're well suited to do.
Yeah.
When are times when you really have to concentrate or focus and really apply your best effort?
As a nonprofit, I think a lot of it comes in the fundraising side. This because our outcomes aren't as tangible, and that's something that I've really struggled with throughout my career. Right, we are an antecedent to great things. Right, we know that. So as funding for stuff that I want to do typically will come from corporate sponsors or economic development agencies. And the economic development agencies are very metrics driven, rightfully so, right? They're using oftentimes public money. And so they'll ask, great, we'll give you money, but tell us how many jobs will be created, how many businesses will start, how much capital will be infused, yada, yada, yada. And I'm like, all right, I don't know. We promise those things will happen. It's kind of the input, knowing the output, but we also, I don't feel comfortable taking a lot of credit for that stuff. The outcomes are the relationships, right? Yeah. So how do I effectively take credit for, I've introduced people. I've met people that have said, Travis, I came to Venture Cafe. I was in academia. I came to Venture Cafe because I really wanted to get more into, industrial design. And the relationship I made at Venture Cafe led to me having a job when I left my academic post to go work in this industry. Great. I appreciate that. But I can't capture that. So I think a lot of the time is just my focus and my challenge is I know good stuff is happening. How do I capture it? How do I convey the bigger story? Because that is hard to capture.
And when you go to an economic development agency, when they ask for those metrics, what do you give it?
So I give them, here's how many, and then I give what kind of raw numbers and then individual anecdotes. And I said, what I'm giving you are anecdotes of the 15 to 20 times that I've captured. Let's assume that it happens more often than that. But these 15 to 20 times are great. And the other thing that I challenge them with is I'll say to them, well, I know that you're asking me for metrics, but I noticed that anytime you're trying to attract a company to St. Louis, be it a startup or a larger company, they seem to always show up at Venture Cafe and tour them through. And as this is a highlight, and this is a tour stop on as an asset to the region. So in order for us to continue, I might need some funding. And so I asked them I kind of turned it back on them. This is, very the Socratic method, right? So tell me why you bring large corporates here to show Venture Cafe off.
Yeah.
Oh, well, it's because it's the heartbeat of the region. So it's keeping the region alive. Therefore, there is some sort of outcome. Let's go that. Can you fund based on that?
Compare St. Louis's startup ecosystem to others like you've experienced in California or globally.
Yeah. I refer to St. Louis as an adolescent, the startup scene, the innovation scene, as being in its adolescence. It's the analogy I've used is it's a kid that tested into the gifted program, but it's still a teenager. So we know it's going to be good. It's going to get into medical school. It's going to make us all really proud. But it still makes some really stupid kid-like mistakes. And we like it. When I use that analogy, people they can picture it, right? You have that one kid, probably 14 years old. You're like, hey, this Thanksgiving, you sit at the adult table. And then they say something stupid and you're like, you're such a kid. I'm like, yeah, they are a kid. Huh. They're on that borderline of they can assume adult type behaviors, but their development is still childlike. Or, we're going to give you the keys to the car. And then you get mad because they wrecked the car. Oh yeah, because a lot of kids wreck their first car. Don't give them an expensive first car. And our investor community are kind of like the rich kids. The investor community are the rich kids that have money, but they still make some childlike mistakes. And so, and it's not a fault. It's not a slam. It's just where we are in our development process. And and I keep going back to that caveat. But we tested into the gifted program. We are really, really good. There's this. I realized that kids take the test to determine if they're gifted, in the third grade, which is so unfortunate and unfair. In third grade, across the country, all these students are given a test, and you get the right score. Your track is altered, and you're on this gifted program. And if you don't,
your whole life.
And that's that sets the tone for everything. If you score 2 points lower, you're you're in the normal track, right? So good luck with that. But if you're on this gifted track, things are smooth sailing. You get first pick of all the right classes in high school, and et cetera, et cetera. But we expect that a kid is going to live up to that potential, and not every kid will. I mean, I know kids that tested into the gifted program and they crashed and burned. So we have to expect that even though we've tested into gifted and we know our track looks like we're going to be successful, there are still some points that we might falter, and that's okay. As long as we know, and I'm a firm believer in setting very realistic expectations. St. Louis is great, but it's not Silicon Valley, and that's okay. So I'm on this. I've been on this. This drumbeat. I did it even in California of trying to limit the amount of external comparisons that we make, and just do year over year comparing ourselves to ourselves. Right. So if St. Louis is a gifted adolescent, is it a little bit better this year than it was last year? Right? Are your grades improving? Are you doing more extracurricular things? Are you scoring better on your tests? Right. So not comparing ourselves to other classmates, other cities, but are we incrementally improving year over year? Because that's where we have the greatest control.
Yeah.
We can control ourselves. We can't control what other, Silicon Valley is the kid with the rich parents. We can't control that their parents are incredibly wealthy and putting them in better situations than we are. That's all right. We get to work with the assets and the resources that we have.
Yeah. Yeah. It's definitely a human tendency to compare.
Yeah.
What gets you out of bed? Is it the fact that other people are going to be succeeding based on what you've created? Yeah.
So I started going down this road when I ran a vocational school, vocational college, worked in marketing and at an agency, and then also ran a business incubator with startups. And in each one of those jobs that I had, each one of those areas, my success was predicated on the success of my product, right? So at the vocational school, my success was did we have successful students? Did they graduate? Did they get placed in good careers? And were the employers happy with the products they received? In marketing, it was my clients. So are my clients moving more product? Are they increasing their sales? I got to do some stuff behind the scenes, but ultimately it was measuring somebody else's success. And then even working in business with business startups, are these startups successful? Are they creating jobs? And so again, it's something that I have the privilege of looking back on now. But yeah, I love to try to make other people successful, knowing that my success will be fine. Like I will take care of myself. Like everything works out. But I really like to set conditions and environments for other people to be successful. So when I wake up in the morning, it's like, all right, let's get to work and try to create conditions for success for somebody.
Nice.
I like to share this story because it's both funny and sad at the same time. When my wife and I were just dating, she looked across the table and said, "Travis, you make me so happy," which is like the nicest thing anybody could say. And my response was, no, I create an environment in which your happiness is the most likely outcome.
She rolled her eyes.
She's like, what does that even, what do you mean? Like, and then I realized, oh yeah, I've taken a lot of stats classes and I understand something. But I also said, but imagine how romantic that is, that like every day I think to myself, how can I create an environment in which your happiness is the most likely outcome? First, it allows me to understand that I don't control her happiness. I don't make her happy. I don't make students succeed. I don't make entrepreneurs, connect. I try to create an environment in which whatever that desired outcome is the most likely. And it's also not guaranteed, right? It's just in the normative curve, it's at the top, right? More oftentimes it will be successful. But I've used that as like my kind of guiding model. And I try to tell other people what can you do? Every day we're creating environments for other people where something is going to be the most likely outcome. So what environment are you really creating? And so that's why looking at the fact that my success is usually predicated on other people being successful, I don't make them successful. All I try to do is create the right environments for people.
Yeah, perfect. I love that. When we first met, you just gotten back from a trip to Ireland, maybe?
Yeah.
Were you in Spain as well?
No, France and Ireland. So I was in Lyon, France, and then Dublin and Galway, Ireland.
Yeah, and you talking before the interview about setting up venture cafes elsewhere in the world. Was that what that was part of?
That was part of just a U.S. St. Louis delegation overseas. And so we went over there with a contingent from St. Louis, all in the areas of economic development and the startup community, large corporates. Lyon is one of our sister cities. bioMérieux, which is a large biotech company, is headquartered in Lyon, and then their largest stateside presence is in St. Louis. So we went to somebody from bioMérieux, St. Louis, went over and helped give us a tour and see what kind of things are going on over there. And then in Dublin, MasterCard went with us, and Rob Reig, who is the president of MasterCard headquartered here in St. Louis, went over to Dublin. We met with the U.S. ambassador to Ireland, who he's from St. Louis, and so he helped.
Oh, cool.
We did a nice little meet and greet there, talking about the similarities between the two cities. And because MasterCard has a large presence in Dublin, it made sense for us to meet with some folks there. And then we got to look at the startup and the innovation community there. And then Galway is another sister city of ours. And so we just looked at some similarities. And so it was just neat kind of bringing those three communities together.
It seems like there are multiple tiers or layers. There's like, if you're an entrepreneur, your business and your team. And then there's the local area, like what Venture Cafe has created, that ecosystem. And then there's the international connections. There's so many different connections at play. I don't know. How do you sort through all the possibilities?
Well, I mean, I think the fact of the matter is the possibilities are endless. And I have to keep going back to that second half of what we try to do, make things happen, right? Their connections are there. So connecting entrepreneurs or innovators is great, but how do we find those connections that are going to make things happen? And I know making things happen is contradictory to what I said about creating an environment, but realizing that now. But the other one's just too wordy for a mission or a tag. So, so I think when we look at these opportunities, either locally or at the small scale of just within startups, or regionally with what the role Venture Cafe plays, or globally with trying to connect these communities, we have to look at those opportunities where we have the greatest likelihood of things happening. So We just launched in Rotterdam about a year ago. In fact, this week is when Rotterdam's new finished building, the finished space is launching. And we met with the Council General from Rotterdam or from the Netherlands yesterday. And we were talking about the fact that because we're in two cities, we have Venture Cafe in St. Louis and Venture Cafe in Rotterdam, there are opportunities for these companies to just do, international business. If you're a St. Louis-based company, we have this infrastructure. If they want to go over there, they can drop in on a Thursday night, or they can go to the CIC building and get some work done, and vice versa. And so creating like this physical space in both countries or both communities allows for softer landings. If I show up, if somebody from Rotterdam shows up and they're like, oh, well, I'm a member of CIC, I guess I'll look up CIC and, oh, there's one in St. Louis. Okay, great. I will go hang out there and work in a conference room and make some, connections. Or I'll be there on a Thursday and go to Venture Cafe because it's cool that it's consistent across all these different regions. And then getting the larger community. So in St. Louis, getting the larger economic development community involved. When a person comes from out of town, St. Louis is really good at rolling out the red carpet. That's what they did for me. That's what sold me on St. Louis. Is I visited in November of 2011 with the sole purpose of stealing best practices. I'm like, hey, I'm in California running this water, clean energy, and ag tech incubator. I know you guys are doing a lot in the biotech space. I'd love to see what you're doing and maybe see what I can apply back in California.
Uh-huh.
And they're like, yeah, come and visit. And, one person set up like 6 meetings for me. Like, here's some people you should meet with, the whole agenda for like this 3-day visit. And I thought, this is kind of awesome. And I met with all these key players of high levels within organizations, economic development and business, and got back on the plane. And my wife is from here originally. And that's usually everybody rolls their eyes and like, that's how you got here. It's not. It really isn't. Not that she hated, but like every community, young people, when they leave, they swear they're never coming back. And invariably, it's not just St. Louis. Sorry, people. It's not just St. Louis. Invariably, they do come back. But we got on the plane and we're like, I think I just fell in love with St. Louis in 3 days. Like, this city is pretty awesome. And this was what we have now didn't even exist 4 years ago in November of 11. It's changed a lot in the 4.5 years that we've been here. But like the fact that people rolled out the red carpet and met with me and helped connect me to the community. And so that's where, when I look at things that are happening on a global or a larger scale, that's the role that Venture Cafe can play, is that if you are going to Tokyo, and we have a presence in Tokyo, we have assets and resources there to help get you plugged in. And anything that helps close that, save time, or whatever resource it is, time, money, energy, for innovators and entrepreneurs is crucial, right? Because, time is the thing that we have a tendency to waste. I've quickly now, thankfully, and I appreciate this role. If people are coming to St. Louis, they're like, oh, just check in with Travis. He'll get you connected into where you need to be in St. Louis.
Yeah.
There were 5 people that I met when I came to St. Louis that helped set the tone. Not only like help get me connected, but they were also very positive about St. Louis. And I think that it could have gone the other way. Like, if I would have met 5 people that just wanted to dump on St. Louis all the time, like, I would have gotten here going, man, what kind of decision did I make? This is horrible. Like, this is a horrible place. But I happened to meet 5 cheerleaders that were just like, hell yeah, St. Louis is awesome. I'm like, then I guess everybody believes St. Louis is awesome.
Yeah, and that was my experience. When I I found you on Twitter and I was looking at places to meet, and you were like, come on down. I was like, all right, this is really cool.
Yeah, and because I think what's interesting about Venture Cafe on the Thursday nights is, I guess I like sets of 3. So there's 3 types of people in every community, every city. There are legacies, transplants, and boomerangs, or to make it sexier, legacies, pioneers, and boomerangs. The people who have a tendency to have a more negative opinion are the legacies. And a legacy is defined as born, raised, never left. And when I say never left, I mean never. Not even if I find out you're a legacy and you're like really, really cool and down to earth, I'll dig a little deeper and they're like, well, I spent 6 months, doing a study abroad. And I'm like, okay, you're not a legacy then. Uh-huh. Like you have outside perspective. Now, if you say, well, I'm a legacy, but my family, every summer we vacation up in Michigan. I'm like, all right, well, you're still a legacy. Like, you haven't, like, vacationing with your family in the summer isn't the same as, removing yourself from your environment and spending time elsewhere. The transplants or the pioneers are a person like me that has no knowledge of St. Louis, but end up here. And the boomerangs, a person like you or a person like my wife who was here, left, and then boomeranged back. Venture Cafe on Thursday is almost all, I would say, I don't know what the percentage is, but I would say most people are transplants or boomerangs. they're not as much the legacies.
Interesting. Yeah.
So when you come in, you're like, wow, I just feel like I'm around people that are reinforcing my decision to be in this area. And there are a few legacies. The legacies are usually come out of curiosity. They're like, I've heard about this. What's going on?
People doing.
Yeah. And they come in, they're like, this is not the St. Louis that I know. And hopefully legacies are important because they have that institutional knowledge of the region. They know where the bodies are buried. I guess in St. Louis, that could be an actual thing. But they know the landscape and whatnot. So I don't want to like crap on the legacies. But legacies, and it's not just in St. Louis, other communities, legacies are usually the ones that are like, nothing ever happens here. I hate it here. And it's like, there's that like proverb of like the frog that's like in a pot of water, and if you boil it slowly over time, then the frog will just die. But you put a frog in a boiling pot of water, it'll hop out right away. Yeah. Like the legacies are kind of like nothing ever happens, and like it happens all around them every single day.
You guys, I want to tell you about my new book. It's called Conductors, and it's about combining creativity with relationships so that you can do something that's never been done before, or just get your big thing off the ground. And a lot of people want to ensure that they're valuable in the future of the workplace. You want that too, right? So this book is about how to ensure that you're not replaced by robots or artificial intelligence or outsourcing. There's a lot of great stories from guests on this podcast, specific actionable things for you to do to be more creative, to learn faster, to be a super connector, to think outside the box. It's going to be awesome. I'm launching a pre-order campaign on October 1st. There's a lot of cool bonuses. If you buy books, you can buy a single book, which is awesome. You can also buy them in bulk, like 3 or 5 or 10. Some of those bonuses are a month of coaching with me. You can have me come speak at your organization or group. And one of my favorites is you can join me on the next Adventure Quest in Bali. That's a week-long trip in April 2017. So to check out the campaign and pre-order your books, you go to publishizer.com/conductors. Publishizer is the name of the place where I'm running the publishing campaign. Conductors is the book. Publishizer.com/conductors. You can sign up now and pick which pre-order bonus you want. I've got just a couple questions left for you that I asked 2 questions of all my guests.
Okay.
So the first one is, if you could change or add anything to the world, what do you want the world to have?
Change or add? This is I don't know how tangible it is, but this is what I would love to add to the world, is a deeper understanding of connectivity. I want people to know that their actions actually impact other people, positively or negatively. And I like the word impact more than anything else, because impact is there's not a charge one way or another, right? Positive impact or negative. But I would like people to just be more cognizant of the fact that everything that we do impacts another human being. And really impacts the world. I mean, not just human beings, impacts the ecosystem, impacts, the environment.
Yeah.
And that is going back to, creating an environment for the most desired outcome. We have to understand our role in that. And that I think too many people, they look at their world and like, I'm doing it. It's my thing. Don't worry about it. It's just about me. If I'm a professional football player and I'm going to stand up or I'm going to sit down. Yes, okay, that's good. And I love the fact that it impacts the world. And again, it impacts the world in a variety of different ways. Or somebody being a bigot, like I can be a bigot or I can hang up a Confederate flag. It's just me. Well, that impacts, like there's a ripple effect to you hanging up that Confederate flag. And we don't, the moment you shake a person's hand, you have impacted their life. Like, and I just don't think the world gets that much. We look at our lives as being isolated, and we're the furthest from isolated.
It blew me away when I learned that my happiness not only affects the happiness of my first circle connections, but it affects the happiness of their connections. So my friends, coworkers can become happier if I'm happier. So so it's like I really need to manage, these things, because it's like flowing out into the world.
Yeah, in grad school, I worked on this project. We created this like internal program called Kindtagious, and it was essentially about creating a culture of kindness so that people would spread kindness. And the way I thought, the reason it came to me is I was in San Francisco and I went through the Bay Bridge, and paying my toll on the lady said, "Oh, don't worry, the car in front of you paid for it." I'm like, "Well, that's cool. Well, here's my $5 anyway. Pay for the car behind me." And I had asked her, I'm like, "I'm probably taking up too much time, but how? Like, does this happen very often?" She's like, "Oh, probably like once every couple of weeks we get this little string that happens." And I said, "What's the longest you've seen it go?" And she said, "I don't know, but probably like 300 cars." I'm like, wow. That's amazing. And so there's two things that came to mind. That's amazing. And then the second thing that came to mind, I'm like, who's the son of a bitch at number 300 who didn't pay for the car behind him? Jerk, right? But then I gave it some more thought, and I thought, what if that car 300 had to make a choice between paying their toll or eating lunch that day? Like, what if all they had was that $5?
Yeah.
And they said, "Oh my gosh, I get to actually eat lunch today." Like, so I've stopped thinking about kindness and like happiness as something that has to have this ripple effect. Like when I am nice to somebody or if I'm kind, I'm doing it for them. I'm not doing it for them to give to somebody else.
Yeah.
But as you were saying, our happiness and those acts that we do influence other people. They do impact other people. It's not just our circle of friends, it's our coworkers. And when you have a coworker that's in a crappy mood, it's not because they're pissed at you. It could be some road rage that they experienced. It could be their child, threw up on them or didn't want to get out of bed. Like we're a part of this like really complex system. And we have to stop and think that for the most part, people don't wake up. Our egos allow us to believe that people wake up to piss us off. like I'm going to get up and ruin Travis's day today. Nobody does that. Like if they're having a bad day, I can have an opportunity to maybe improve their day, but they're really not. There are maybe, if you're an elected official, maybe people, wake up to ruin your day. But for us humans, normal humans, people really don't care about our day that much. But we should care a lot more about other people's days.
I love it. Ready for the final question?
Sure.
What's your definition of adventure?
Oh, my definition of adventure. Boldly going. I'm not going to finish the quote to sound like Star Trek, but just boldly going. So my definition of adventure is, how do you boldly go into new places? My wife, when we first moved to St. Louis, we would take one street in St. Louis and drive the entire length to see. We'd have an adventure on one single street. So if it was Broadway, we would drive all the way to end up at Jefferson Barracks, or go north and end up all the way down near Chain of Rocks Road and Chain of Rocks Bridge, and look at how the environment, the surroundings change on one single street. To me, that's adventure. Like we're making a conscious effort to do something for some sort of, experience or purpose. When I go to new cities, I'm hard pressed to ask for things and get recommendations that aren't touristy. Like, oh, you should do this. I'm like, I don't care about the Eiffel Tower. Like, I want to know on a Thursday night, where do you go drink?
Yeah. Or
where is the one place that you love to go eat when you're going to spoil your wife or your girlfriend? Where is the place that you go? To me, that's the adventure. My adventure is boldly getting into somebody else's life, right? Like I want to experience a world through your eyes, not your eyes as a tourist, because you're not a tourist in your own town. Like, so most things that are touristy aren't bold to me. Like they're go, but they're not a boldly go. To me, a boldly go is saying, I'm going to do things that aren't in that checklist. When it says 100 things to do in St. Louis, I want number 101 through 201. Like I want the second 100 things to do in St. Louis that are off the beaten path.
Awesome. Travis, what's the best place to get in touch with you and find out more about what you're up
to? Probably following me on Twitter, which is @TravisSheridan, or every now and then I update my personal website, which is travissheridan.com. I try to do everything by first and last name, just so if it's crappy, you can blame me. If it's good, you can give me marginal credit. So.
Perfect. Thanks so much for all of your great stories. It's been a pleasure.
Oh, thanks for having me. It's been great.
All right. Hope you guys enjoyed that episode with Travis Sheridan. That was another good one in my books. And if you guys are thinking to yourself, wow, Travis is great at talking. He's an awesome storyteller. Well, he's had a lot of practice. He said this is what he's been training his whole life to do. So if you're not quite there yet, don't worry. He's super pro at talking. and telling stories and promoting people, which is perfect. And you can use his 3-pronged approach, his meet you, know you, and help you approach. Adam Grant always says, givers are going to be more successful than matchers and takers. A lot of good thoughts in there. Introverts versus extroverts. I know that I can be introverted sometimes, even though I think mostly I'm an extrovert. Kind of goes both ways. So I'd love to hear what your biggest takeaways from this were. I share my own takeaways and thoughts at the end of these episodes, but I'd love to hear from you. So feel free to send me an email if it made a difference for you in your business, or you can leave a comment on iTunes. And Travis is going to be featured in my new book, Conductors, in the chapter on superconnectors. And there's a lot of other guests from the show in that chapter: Judy Robinette, John Cochran, Tyler Wagner, Jason Troy, to name a few. And you're going to learn all the skills you need to know to be an amazing networker, an amazing relationship builder in this chapter, and all kinds of other great things in the book. So Conductors, right now we're in the middle of October. The pre-order campaign is only good. It's only going in October. There's lots of other bonuses, other books from people featured in Conductors. There's all kinds of other bonuses, coaching, access to Confidence Conference, which is an online summit I'm putting on. Check it out, publishizer.com/conductors. If you order in October, then you'll get to take advantage of some of these awesome bonuses. I hope you check it out. Thanks so much for listening today. Now it's your turn to go out there and be adventurous.